I've been working on this game for a while now. In fact, I have uploaded what I think will be the last update. The game is called HiWave. It's a simple twin-stick shooting game. Think like Geometry Wars or Robotron. The game is made in Unreal, and I started on it 2 years ago. I'm happy with how the whole thing turned out, and I wanted to make a video to talk about how I got here and what I learned along the way. HiWave was an attempt to learn from the mistakes made while working on Breach. Breach was a first-person shooter I made right after finishing an online class in Unreal 4. The class was great, and I try to push it on any of my friends who have ever expressed interest in learning Unreal. A fantastic resource. The game I made, though, looks like this. So, it was rough, but left a lot of room to improve, and I think I did. There are 3 big things I want to talk about that I think made HiWave work out much better than Breach. With HiWave, I prioritized my capability to iterate quickly, designed a game in a much more manageable scope, and made something that played to my strengths as a developer. The biggest problem with Breach was scope. I thought I had the time, energy, and to be honest, talent to make a first-person shooting game on my own, and I was mistaken. Even leaning on the asset store as hard as I possibly could, it just wasn't going to come together. With HiWave, I scoped down. It's an arcade-style twin-stick shooter where you shoot waves and waves of enemies and try to chase up a score. There are mechanics around weakening enemies with an alternate attack to increase your rate of fire. That starts a chain that you want to keep going in order to keep up with the increasing rate of enemies coming toward you. This all works to make the game unique within the genre, and that took some time to come up with, but it's still a twin-stick shooter. Having the basic gameplay be this simple let me prototype everything very early. There's only one level, and it's this one. And there are only 7 enemies, and they all look like this. And these didn't have to be complete before people could start playing it. My first release on HIO was far more stripped down than this, and that was fine. Once I had this, people could see what this thing was going to be. That quick turnaround time told me I had scoped successfully. The other big change from making Breach was that Breach was primarily made with Unreal blueprints, and not C++. If I know how to do anything, it's write code. I learned C++ in school and have written plenty of it in the past, so I figured now is the time to start using it in Unreal. What does C++ have to do with iteration and fast turnaround? Most documentation and tutorial resources you're going to find for Unreal are blueprint-based. C++ stuff does exist, but you have to dig for it. C++ in Unreal is its own challenge outside of just knowing the language. In order to interface with the engine, the code you write will be full of Unreal Engine specific macros, decorators, and static methods. It's not just writing C++, it's writing Unreal's flavor of C++. Build times are slow. This is the biggest thing, honestly. After a while, you bookmark some good resources and learn the major Unreal quirks, but there's no way around this. Just opening a C++ project takes a while. To start working on HiWave, I would have to open the Visual Studio project, wait for Visual Studio to finish initializing, start a build of the debug editor project, wait for that build to finish, run the debug editor project, which would then actually start the engine, and then wait for the engine to start. As the game grew in size, that became a 15-minute process. And of course, if you actually need to edit code, you have 2 options. The first one was to end execution of the debug editor project, change your code, and then rebuild and restart, which would usually take less time after the initial build, but was still a few minutes. Second, there is a code hot reload button in the editor itself, but the first time using this takes a while too. Subsequent uses are pretty fast, but the first one can take a while. These build issues were reduced after a hardware upgrade. I went from an old hard disk drive to a solid state after the old drive died. This improved build times dramatically. So, what does this say about iteration? All this goes to say, in my experience, as a novice and a hobbyist, and absolutely not an expert game developer whom no one should be looking to as a source of valuable information, it is my opinion that C++ comes at an iteration cost. Yes, it performs better, and yes, I get to say I use C++, and that makes me very smart, I guess, whatever that's worth. But was it a good idea? I'm not sure. Wherever values like movement speed, fire rate, spawn rate, or point values could be exposed to blueprints so their defaults could be modified by a blueprint subclass, I did. Locking up integers and floats behind C++ build processes is a way to burn a lot of time. Iteration cost aside, C++ is something I came into the project already knowing. That, plus having taken time to do an online course in Unreal 4, which again, I highly recommend if you want to get into this yourself, and having finished Breach, I had a solid foundation of knowledge and experience with the engine. That part I was confident in. I like to think I am many things, but an artist is not one of them. I make programmer art, which is to say I draw bad. However, I do have some experience in 3D modeling. Not a ton, but I understand Blender well enough. By keeping the visual style simple, a bunch of symmetrical, low-poly ships and enemies, I was able to keep a simple sci-fi aesthetic. None of these things even have skeleton animations. HiWave is all static meshes with a morph target here and there. Materials and particles do the heavy lifting for the visuals. The stage is really just a square with some sides on it, but add a glowing material that changes colors at a rate that increases with the player's rate of fire, and you have a vibrant looking background that reacts to gameplay events. In general, I gave everything some kind of glowing effect to make it feel more alive. I mean, look at this thing. It's pretty much just a blue disc. There are a couple of pieces of UI that I actually did have to draw. I spent some time practicing pixel art as just a random interest. While that doesn't fit the game aesthetic perfectly, the style ends up rubbing off on some of the things I had to draw myself. For audio, sci-fi sound effects are pretty easy to come by. Lasers and explosions are all I really needed for effects. For the in-game background music, I paid someone on Fiverr to make it for me. The main menu music, however, was purchased as a ready-made asset. And that about covers it. Take all of this, some patience, and 2 years of time, and you get a video game made. If you found this video interesting, the one thing I would ask is that you download the game and give it a try. It's free, and a link will be in the description. Thanks for watching.